So welcome everybody. Welcome to the people that are in the room and enjoying snacks. Welcome to everybody who's joining us over Zoom and hopefully also enjoying some good food where they are. And welcome especially to our special guest, Nia Alvarez-Mapp, who's joining us virtually. If we could pin her video for just a moment, I'll do some introductions and then we'll get going. So my name is Ray Ward. I'm the director of the Wolfington Center here at Cabrini University. And I'm joined by Ryan Duncan, who is our full-time AmeriCorps member and leader of our Next Steps program on campus. Recent grad from Temple University in communications with a minor in political science. And he's going to be talking with us about your activism personality. Yeah. And we're also joined by Nia Alvarez-Mapp, who is a Cabrini grad, 2019, with majors in philosophy and writing. Last year, she spent the year working with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, doing grant follow-ups on their grant programs here in Philadelphia, and is now in her first year of her master's program at Union Theological Seminary at Columbia University in New York. She's also been very active on campus. I mean, anybody who's been here for a little while knows very much Nia's passion for activism and organizing and politics. And I'm sure anybody who was here for the beginning of the session knows a little bit about her other passions. So we can't wait to be sharing this platform with her and sharing her with everybody who's able to enjoy that. To start off, I just want to give a quick introduction to what we're doing today, and then hand it over to Ryan and to Nia to have this conversation. We're looking for an interactive discussion today to try to get people's feet wet in activism and organizing. What is activism? So activism is just acknowledging that the change that so many of us want to see in society requires more than just a personal commitment. It requires coordinated action with others. And we're going to hear about the many different ways that that kind of coordinated action can take the grounding of that in our personal commitments. And in future iterations of this, so this is the first of 3 sessions, we're going to explore more how we move past those beginnings and into actually taking that action. This is something that's near and dear to Cabrini University's heart. We're a school that tries to make engaged citizens of the world empowered to graduate from the university and make a change that they want to see in the world. Our ECG sequence, I've heard some people sum it up as learn, serve, change the world. Or I've also heard people say ECG 100 is about moving from maybe ignorance and apathy to caring, moving from caring to action, and then moving from action in ECG 300 from action to advocacy, and really trying to move those levers of power to make a change. And I'm excited that people are here to be a part of this conversation. Normally, I would ask everybody in the room to introduce themselves. But because we're a little short on time and we're trying to do a tremendous amount here, we'll have time at the end of our session today to actually have a little more interaction that way. But before we go to that, we're going to hear from Ryan, and I'm going to pass things over to him. Ryan, welcome.
Yeah, do you want to pull up the PowerPoint?
Yes.
I'm a sucker for a decent PowerPoint, you know? So as Ray mentioned, I'm Ryan, and we're going to be talking a little bit, do you mind hitting the next slide?
Yep.
About what your activism personality is, and then much later on after me, we're going to hear from Nia a lot about telling your story, okay? And then the next slide.
Give it a minute.
So the first thing that I just want us to talk about is who is an activist? We heard a little bit from Ray about what an activist is. So let's talk about some people who come to mind. First thing, right off the top of your head, who are activists, okay? Anyone can unmute themselves and just shout it out. Anyone at all?
Martin Luther King.
Right. And so what did MLK do?
Brought racial justice to the forefront in the country when it needed it most.
Okay. And who are some other famous activists? Can be along that same vein, or it could be an entirely different field whatsoever.
Malala Yousafzai.
Great.
There you go.
Very interesting answer. And so who is Malala?
Pakistani young girl, well, not so cool. She's so young, but she fought for the right for education when the Taliban was keeping it from people.
Mhm. And so who else can we think of? Just a few more names. I want a diverse group here that we can think of. Because activism is very, very broad. There's no wrong answer. Unless they aren't an activist. That might be a wrong answer.
A couple years ago, we had Tarana Burke come to Cabrini to speak, and she was the founder of the Me Too movement.
Right, very interesting. I'm glad you bring her up. We're going to talk about all those people, actually. And so what I want to highlight for you guys is to think a little bit about what traits all these people share and what they specifically did, not just what their area of focus was, but the things they did to bring change, right? So I think you can just hit the next slide. So that, yeah. So here are some of the people that you probably thought of. First person we heard from, I knew it, read your minds, MLK, right? That's who everyone thinks of. This man is an activist, probably one of the most famous Americans, period, but also probably the most famous activist. Next slide. Yeah, maybe you thought of Rosa Parks, who also worked to bring about some sort of racial equality in this country and got very famous for it. Famous for refusing to move to the back of the bus in Alabama. Next slide. Maybe you thought of Greta Thunberg, the climate activist. One of the reasons why I wanted to highlight her is because, you know, again, I thought everyone would think of racial activism. There's environmental activism. Also, she's incredibly young. She, I think, is still in high school, actually. You know, you don't have to be 45-year-old, 55-year-old Martin Luther King to be an activist. You could be 16 and be an activist. Okay. I believe I put one more person in. Malala. Thank you so much, Samar. Another person who I think is really critical to highlight. She's very young. I think she just graduated college, or maybe she just graduated high school. One of the two. She just graduated college. Yeah. Who works really heavily in getting people, especially women, involved in education around the world. You know, and all of these people in some way touched other people's lives, but they all had slightly different methods of doing it. And so that's what we're going to get into in a second. So I think we can move on to the next slide. So, these are just some other people that I thought were important to highlight, because although activism is extremely politically charged, there are also two sides to it. And so we're not necessarily taking a stance here. So I wanted to highlight there are liberal and conservative activists, or who we would probably commonly label as liberal or conservative. These people might have actually taken a bit of an issue with that label. For instance, I don't think Tarana Burke really considers herself a liberal activist. She's, as someone mentioned, the famous founder of the Me Too movement. That's not necessarily political, but I think a lot of people might necessarily associate her with that, but she might fight against that label. Peter Thiel is the co-founder of PayPal, has donated to a lot of conservative causes. I consider himself a little bit more of a libertarian. Some other people you may not know if you're a little bit younger like me. Phyllis Schlafly was really famous in the 70s and 80s, had some very popular opinions in the 70s and 80s that probably a lot of people would take issue with now. Ben Shapiro, I think everyone knows, for that really rapid style of talking where he just talks and talks and talks and talks and calls that debating. But, you know, he's also definitely an activist. Some other young people that I wanted to highlight, Emma Gonzalez and David Hogg, two very famous survivors of Parkland shooting in Florida a few years ago, who now advocate for gun safety laws. And so now let's get into, oh, wow, I totally forgot what was on this PowerPoint. I'm so glad this is getting recorded. So this is just a question that I wanted everyone to like hang on to for a second. Are people who post on social media but don't take any further action activists? So we had people who were creating marches, we had people who were crafting legislation, we had people who donate to common causes. Are people who post on social media activists, if that's the only action they take? I just want you all to think about that for a second. And I believe now we can get into what your activism personality is. So what I need everyone to do is go to the link that you can see on your screen. You have some instructions for how to get there. I believe that will also be posted in the chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want, you can go to google.com and just type in pathways to civic engagement. Should be the first link that pops up from Stanford University. Scroll down to the bottom and click the survey. And that should take a few minutes. Okay.
I'll get that link in the chat in just a second.
Yeah. And I guess we should ask them to let us know when they're done, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you can probably just type in the chat when you're done, if someone's watching that. And so the reason why you're taking this quiz is to find out if you want to be an activist, what are the shapes and forms that that can take? So for instance, maybe you're a gigantic policy wonk. Like the thing that really gets you excited and engaged is reading academic papers and reading legislation and debating that with other people in the community. Maybe what you really want to do is something really, really hands-on. Like if you care about the environment a lot, maybe you're really into like adopting a highway and picking up all the different pollutants and garbage that people might leave there, or planting trees, that sort of thing. Maybe you're a bit of a philanthropist, where you take your private money or fundraise it and you donate it to charitable causes that you think do really good work. There are lots of other ways that this can take shape, but I want you guys to see for yourselves what really fits your style, your personality, who you are, how you think you could be most effective in your community. And so now for the awkward silence.
You could do the Jeopardy music.
Yeah.
It's really because I'm doing the survey.
As you do finish the survey and get your results, please share, if you're comfortable, share what your result is in the chat.
So while people are doing that, I've decided I cannot take the silence. My ADHD is screaming. So instead, I'm just going to pose a question to anyone in the room, and you can answer or not. Who is your favorite activist? Okay. Who comes to mind that you think this person, that's who I want to really in some way replicate their work, or in some way you think they have been extremely impactful. Obviously, everyone's going to say MLK, so we're going to take him off the table for a second. You can come up with someone else like Cornel West, or I don't know, maybe Phyllis Schlafly. You're a huge fan of her. You know, anyone at all, whoever comes to mind. Megan, is Samar your favorite
I
activist?
think so.
Samar, how are you an activist?
Activism, I got one for you that we don't talk about.
Oh, yeah?
I would really want to give honor and gratitude to Dorothy Day, a famous Catholic activist. She is one of the main people in New York City, especially, who sort of relied on political and religious practice. And for a while, I also think we tend to not really put politics and religion together when they're very much so cohesive. So I really want to give honor to her, as well as people like Audre Lorde and her womanist theology. I mean, no, not even her womanist now. She's a womanist theologist to me, even though she never did theology personally. One of my, actually, a former professor in my now school union, Dr. James Cone, who was the founder of Black Liberation Theology. His Saint Charles Borromeo now, of Latino theology. So I'm a theologian now, surprisingly, even though I was a philosophy person at first. I wanted to give that. I just wanted. Religion has been on my mind for a moment now, but I do want to give love and shout out to my philosophy people who are in this Zoom call, and I just wanted to give that love to you all.
And so would you say that because I know, Nia, you're very, very politically active. Would you say that a lot of your activism comes from some sort of theological perspective?
It comes from a mixture of both. Also, I want to highlight something really quickly so everyone can see this. But yeah, I think it comes from, personally for me, it comes from community. Community it's really like my identity. It makes and breaks me. Whatever my community wants or talks about on a constant basis, I tend to follow in that persuasion, because as a born and raised New Yorker, diversity and community, it's much people don't really think that the metropolitan, we don't really talk to each other. We actually do. It's a really small world here. So that community and that thinking sort of goes hand in hand to your actions. So if there's like a good amount of people that say it's not right, but then you have more critical sense of saying, okay, what exactly is the problem? Then you sort of go into the activism. So it's a little tidbits of philosophy, a little bit tidbits of theology, and just a whole round of what people want and what people are willing to fight for, which I'll talk about more in my lecture, but that's what I think about when it comes to perspective.
Awesome.
So it looks like Shayna's been having some trouble with the link. Was anybody else able to fill out the link and to get a result?
I'm still filling it out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's strange.
too.
Like, I tried clicking save and continue, but it won't let me select anything or type anything in.
Oh, you have to drag and drop. So you drag things from the list into the box rather than typing.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. I'm like,
Yeah,
thanks.
that's probably not clear if you're doing it on your phone or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
All right, so we do have a result from Vinayak. And just as background before we get into the results, this is coming from the Haas Center for Civic Engagement, or for the Haas Center for Public Service at Stanford University. They're, like the Wolfenden Center, just not as good. And they really are working with students at Stanford to get civically engaged and involved in their communities. We thought that this was a really useful way to break open this idea of what exactly is an activist? How does that look like? And where might we best fit in the different venues for activism? So we'll give it just a minute or two more. And if you haven't been able to finish in that time, please keep going as you do, but feel free to join the conversation as we debrief a little bit. Ryan, did you take the quiz?
I did.
And what kind of results were you seeing there?
So I got so it breaks down your results in what you have a lot of experience in and what you have a lot of interest in.
Mm-hmm.
So what I got, my results didn't honestly surprise me too much, because actually one of the questions is about AmeriCorps, and that is the direct service category. So obviously I'm getting some experience with that and have an interest in direct service. How can I directly make an impact on you, the person in front of me who has a problem? That is the tree planting, that is the tutoring children who are a little bit behind on their reading level, delivering medical supplies to hospitals who need them right now, for like a pandemic world example. But also mine was the policy and governance side. I have always found some form of policy very interesting, and I really, really enjoy looking at all these different effects that a certain action is having and why this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, but probably a lot of people don't, I'm an assistant debate coach. And so a lot of what I do is this good or bad? Let's talk about it, use a little bit of critical thinking and research skills to find out, and even inject some nuance into it, because maybe it's not all good or all bad. And in fact, 90% of things are not all good or all bad, you know? So that's what I got.
Okay, so not necessarily surprising for you. from
No,
that.
but I think for a lot of people, it will be.
Okay, yeah, Vinayak,
Yeah.
are you able to unmute and maybe share a little bit of your reaction to getting direct service and philanthropy?
Yeah, I was a little surprised by my results in terms of direct service. Also, it seems like it's more geared towards students who are currently in school because some of the options were not really applicable to me. So I kind of see the philanthropy aspect. I was surprised by the direct service aspect for me.
Okay, can you, and I think philanthropy is maybe a new thing for some people to think about in this category of activism.
Yeah.
Why was that not surprising to you? And then maybe let's break that down a little bit.
Because in some of the options I had selected that I've been doing it for quite some time. And I think I had mentioned that it does create an impact for people who do need funding. So that part of the activism personality I have been practicing. So I wasn't surprised by that. But the other one, I was a little surprised.
Okay. And Ryan and I had a little discussion ahead of time. Do you think of philanthropy as a form of activism? And that's to you, Vinayak, or to anybody else?
Oh, I absolutely believe it is a form of activism because a lot of organizations need funding and need funds to run the programming that they're going to do. So I think it's really important for some people to be funding organizations that can actually do the direct service and the community organizing that you yourself may not be able to do.
Okay, excellent. I'm hearing from Jose and Julie in the chat too that they're saying 100% this is a form of activism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that puts you guys steps ahead of me because I know in my mind the simple view of activism for me is in the streets, right? It's those examples of people that we named first. It's MLK, it's Martin Luther King, who is the same person. It's Malcolm X, you know, it's people leading marches. And then I think if you ask me about philanthropy, I would say, oh, well, that's Bill Gates or that's the Koch brothers. But I think that everybody here, I think this is a change that we've seen in the political landscape and the way that social change happens is that even small donors are a huge part of bringing together the funds necessary to make the kinds of changes or support the kinds of programs that embody the changes that we want to see happen. Good. Jose, can you say a little more about what do you mean by it being a small percentage?
I'm sorry, yeah, in the sense of there's such a small percentage of people that actually go and protest in the sense of out on the streets.
Yes.
In comparison to the activism that happens on a more frequent basis, daily basis, weekends, right? Where people are actively involved in through their church and or clubs, you know, organizations, civic organizations, or local organizations within their community where is a consistent reminder of giving back. What are ways? It can be as small as starting a, you know, I live in Ambler and I'm part of many small little organizations, active. I view it as social-minded activist organizations. And I'm also part of Weaver's Way, which is a community-based grocery store. And so we're conscious about food insecurity and how to engage others in less financially supported communities of being involved in those communities and starting like vegetable gardens, food gardens, right? To me, that's a form of activism. May not necessarily be, and I know Raina, you and I've had one-on-one conversations about various ways of activism.
Yes.
But I think there's such a small percentage of people that are out there in the last 5 years, I'm just gonna say, who are paving the streets, right? In comparison to those who are doing things almost every day or on the weekends or donating their funds, you know, time, talent, and treasure. I say this all the time. You know, there's many ways to do that. Sorry.
Excellent. Yeah, no, preach. I think that is really the main goal of this first section. And in some ways, it seems like we're preaching to the choir that people already know so much of this, that there is not just one form of activism, right? That if activism is acknowledging the structures and the systems that exist and looking for ways to make them better, that there's so many different ways to do that. Does anybody else want to share their type? Otherwise, I think we should probably be moving forward.
Yeah, I would love to hear Nia talk.
Yes, yeah, we have to get Nia on a soapbox ASAP. All right, well then let's take that point as granted then, that there are different forms of being activists that ranging from, and I just want to be able to say them out loud, this community engaged learning and research is a behind the scenes, somebody who can drill down into the facts and figures. Maybe that's related to the policy and governance piece that Ryan was talking about. We've also got, I think, the more common view of things, community organizing and activism that's out in the streets. But we're, as part of this process, learning that that's the kind of the end result, and not even always the end result, but one of the possible results of this whole chain of work towards making change. Direct service, something that I think we learn early, hopefully in life, about as a way of making an impact in the world. Philanthropy that we've talked about, and then finally this social entrepreneurship and social responsibility. I think this is another key piece that we could get people who are graduating from Cabrini to make that connection, because I think so many students see that they maybe have an all or nothing choice between making a difference in the world and actually making a decent living. And as we continue in this conversation as well, that's something that I think will come up. Ryan, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I just want to thread the needle for a moment, real fast before we hear from Nia, about those different types of activism and the people that we were just talking about. So we hit a lot of examples of the people who are going out and being community organizers, marching in the street. We just talked about that a lot, right? But is that really what, say, Malala does? I don't think that's what she's famous for at all. I think she falls more into the educating the community kind of thing, or even the policy aspects of it. How can we make a societal level change, working the levers of power instead of fighting the levers of power? One of the other people that I included, like William F. Buckley Jr., one of the conservatives, he was never about that. He was, I'm going to write an editorial. I'm going to go on this this show and publicly air my point of view. We talked about, say, the Koch brothers or Bill Gates, who are also activists, but they're the philanthropy side of it. And so I just want to highlight that for all of you, that that's where all of this was going. This is how it all comes together.
All right. And if people want to share their results as they finish them, I think it's going to be fun to hear kind of where people land on that array of, they call it pathways into engagement, right? But without further ado, then we'd like to hand the floor over to Nia. Nia, welcome back to Cabrini. I hope you've got a Cabrini shirt underneath that union shirt, but the floor is all yours. Please take us away.
I actually do, in fact, have a Cabrini shirt. It's a Cabrini Vote shirt. It took me a whole minute to find it, but I found it anyway. I really am glad to be back virtually, if not, with my Cabrini family. So many familiar faces here. And it's really great to just be in this environment. And I really do want to highlight the Wilkington Center. I had been, I call myself like a sort of a hobo in the Wilkington Center for my whole college years there anyway. So it's only fitting that they're the first to invite me back to the campus. I really do want to highlight two things about me. So as you know, I'm a full-time student at Union Theological Seminary. I was about to say Cabrini, I'm an alum now. And I'm also a deputy campaign manager. So this is just to sort of give you a quick background of my professional work, but you really can't hear from my activism. I actually wanted to share my results from the quiz. It's community organizing, activism, and community engaging learning and research. No surprise there. I do want to say that out of all the 6, I think I've done all 6 at Cabrini. So, and I still continue to do all 6, which leads me to my point. I'm trying to really go to the meat and bones of it. There's no such thing as bad activism. In my field of work, there's activists who follow bad clauses and causes, but there's no such thing as bad activism. Any activism to me is a raindrop to a pond that's becoming a sea. Everything helps. It's a marathon, not a race. We're trying to get to your goal on how to make your community, your world better. And to really put people down for their activism really not following along the ways of your activism, that does not help your cause or any of your benefits. There may be some learning process and steps, but the activism is still activism. And the same way as stories is still a story, a struggle is still a struggle. We may all, as you see here, when we look at each other on the Zoom and on the class, activism comes in many shapes and forms, and we tend to follow in this narrative of this perfect activist, but there's no such thing as a perfect activist. And the same way, there's no such thing as an expert. I don't consider myself an expert. And if anyone who says they're an expert activist, they're lying to you, because there's either a beginner or advanced beginner, because activism changes every year and every second of the day. So there's so much information going on. So you're probably wondering, well, if you're saying this, why am I here? Why are we talking about this? It really comes down to it about why are you doing it? So I want you all to sort of think to yourselves. You can write it down. We could talk about it later, but I really want you to think to yourself like this. What do you love and what do you care about? And what are you willing to sacrifice to get the things you love, to protect the things you love or care about? I say it like, here's how I put an example. You know what the one thing I really love? Myself. It sounds very arrogant to those who don't really know it, but for a very long time, I didn't care about myself. I mean, I cared about myself, but I thought me loving myself was helping everyone before myself. And I spent so much time doing that I sort of overwhelmed myself and I didn't really put my needs first. And I almost and then because of that, I ended up I was really close to just losing myself in this place in this world, which made me realize that America needs a radical change in how we view mental health. And then it goes back to this question of what was I willing to sacrifice? I was willing to sacrifice my pride and ego and the stigmatisms to break the stigma, to say that mental health is an issue in America. Same way, just as much as when we support Black Lives Matter, I care about these people because not only am I a part of these groups, but it's not for me at the present, it's for the future. It's the same way how when we look at the civil rights movement, the gay rights movement, any movement in America, it was never for the present. It was helpful if it does happen at the present, but it was never really for the present. It was for their kids, their descendants, their ancestors to remember them in history, to say that they were on the side of the right. And that's what true activism is. Activism is a community gathering together, using your tools and resources to create something powerful and empowering for not just you, but for your descendants and the kids that you don't want them to suffer the way you suffered. So I ask you this question again. What do you love, or what do you care about, and what are you willing to sacrifice to be loved and care about it for? And when we think about activism, we also think about activism in like the extreme extroverted, loud and proud, and no. That's like Jose said, that is a very small percentage. There's, as you saw and you took your quiz, there's a lot of things you could do to be activists. So I'm gonna give one for my introverts, I'm gonna give one for my extroverts, and I'm gonna give one for my ambiverts. Because you know what, I had to give love to all of them because at one point I was all three. And it seems like now I'm just the extrovert today. For my introverts, there's this thing that I've been practicing for a while now called sacred conversations, also known as one-on-ones. One-on-ones are these conversations where you talk to people about what you care about and finding common ground to get something done. You don't have to necessarily agree with every point that person's making, but if at least like 3 of the 5 things that they're saying make sense to you, really get to know it. Find that common root, find that common ground, and really just talk about it. And if it's like 1 out of the 5 things, perfect. And if you don't agree with anything they say, try to figure out so at least you get that other side of perspective to help improve your argument and point. And everyone says that there's no such thing as arguing. There's always something as arguing. That's ludicrous, and personally for me. But that's neither here nor there. That's just gonna be my personal preference. I think that is for you introverts because it allows you to have a better understanding of the world that you're in. And extroverts and ambiverts do it too, but this is mainly an introverted exercise that I recommend people. It's something that you do to really have a better perspective and not being afraid to, and it's challenging to not be afraid to talk to people, talking to strangers. For my extroverts, I know you love to talk. At the same time, you really got to get to the point, because not everybody has time to hear your opinions. My candidate herself is an extrovert, but she likes to go on her tangents. I work with many people in the Cabrini and the Wolfington Center that loves to go on tangents, but we really need to get to the bread and butter of what your point is being made. So this rule that I learned was called 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes. It's 30-second pitch, 60-second answer, and then 2 minutes opening. Because you are trying to you're trying to reach out to as many people as possible, but you're still trying to get to this point, and you might lose people if you keep going on and on about content and clauses. You can still hear them out, but you really want to get your point made across. This is the timing and pacing that you should do it to really make that statement known. And another thing, for me personally, activism also comes with steps. From right now, as we all are reintroducing ourselves, or I'm introducing me to you, it's about awareness, being aware of what your cause is and getting the other person who you're trying to convince to go on your side of the cause to be aware, because we're not trying to convince them in one day. We're not trying to convince them in one day of what you believe in. We're trying to get them aware, so when they actually know more about it, or when time comes and pass, when they really want to learn more about it or be more invested into it, they know who to call to or go to really be a part of that cause and movement. And then you gather more momentum to it, and then you actually get the action done. So everything I'm saying right now is all about awareness. It's not about getting them on your side. It's really just making them aware of who you are and what you believe in. And then for my ambiverts, it's really just now stepping back and reflecting. I think activism, many people don't really talk about this a lot, but activists really get burned out easily because there's so many things are going on right now. As a matter of fact, like I said, I just came back from a protest. I'm doing research on environmental justice because there's a gas leakage in the MTA right now. We're in COVID-19. The presidential election's coming up in less than 2 weeks. That is a lot on everyone's mind. And then there's still so much more things in my head. But at the same time, I'm working full-time, I'm a student full-time, I'm a part of so many organizations part-time, and I'm really a bother and a gadfly to everybody the overtime. So it's like you have to and then like I said, mental health is a really big thing for me. And in order for me to be better with others, I need to be better to myself. So knowing when to step back, reflect, debrief, and taking moments of peace and harmony to be able to make yourself more available to the world. And that's my challenge to my ambiverts. So yeah, so again, I'm gonna recap. Introverts, we're gonna actually do a breakout. I'm gonna invite everyone to do a breakout room in like a few minutes to just try the sacred conversations. One-on-ones, I call them, because I recognize my secular siblings. One-on-ones are basically where you talk to the person next to you. For my Zoom people, you're going to be breaking out into 2 people in each room. For the people in my Zoom, we're going to talk to the person next to you and really understand what you care about. For my ambiverts, really reflecting, debriefing, taking time for yourself to not get overly burned out. And this applies to everyone, but these are the particular challenges I want to give to each particular person. Just finding time for yourself and knowing what is your limits and how far you're willing to go to get your point across. And to my extroverts, 30 seconds of like elevator pitch, just really introducing your topic and charge, knowing who you are. Just really sell yourself, make yourself like a business. I hate using that word, but it makes the most sense in this analogy. 30-second elevator pitch, 60-second answering. So basically, if people want to know more about what you're talking about, you can sort of break it down, but still keep it in a very short time limit so you you don't lose them. And in a 2-minute introduction, so now that they know, now that this is the beauty, this is the hardest and easiest part. Because now they're like, well, who are you? This is where you get to let them know who you are, why you're doing it, and also recapping what you did for your 30 and 60-second answers. We all got that? Cool. So right now we're gonna have a 10-minute breakout room or in person next to each other, one-on-one conversation. And really, I encourage everyone to sort of find common grounds, find out what you care about, what do you love, and just listen. The one thing about activism is not always about talking. It's about stepping back and listening to what people are thinking so you can make your cause and programming and whatever you're doing better. Because again, this is all, activism is really all about your community and how does your community benefit from the things that you do. All right?
Hey, hey. All right. So I think, and because we'll have to manage the transition here, just to kind of restate, we're taking 10 minutes. We're hoping that splits up 5 on 5, because we're going to ask you to pair up one-on-one and share, just like what Nia was saying, that activism comes out of your deepest loves and your deepest cares. So having a moment where you share who you are and what your love is and why you love that or why you care about that. Like as Nia said, that's a sacred moment. If people are comfortable with that language, it's a moment where we step back, and she gave 3 ways to frame that up depending on how you're approaching it. So please take 5 minutes, decide which one of you is going to talk first, and share to whatever level you're comfortable, those loves, those cares, and that history of who you are and how you came to that concern. And then switch over. We'll give you a warning, 5 minutes, and then we'll switch over to the other side. And then we'll come back after that to debrief, and that'll be our close. Sounds good? Jess, we all right for some breakout rooms? All right, so good luck, everybody. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. All right, so in the room, Evelyn and Andres, do you mind pairing up? And Samara and Megan?
Did you just call him Andres? That's Jay.
G.
I was like, did Andres come?
Yeah, so if Evelyn and G would mind pairing up, and Samara and Megan, would you mind pairing up?
I have to. It would be an honor.
Oh, no.
Oh my goodness, this is not gonna be good.
You only have to talk about
Breakout rooms
called
be two,
favorite
or is it-
favorite actor.
You just put us in.
So I think we're gonna be manually pairing you up. Sorry, just a second.
Because I think there's a lot of confusion about this.
I shall with you.
So, anyway.
But it's more about anything that brings, like, so natural conception, natural death, the death penalty, immigration, Black Lives Matter, all those things fall into the pro-life movement. So one of the things that I've been doing is making sure that people are educated about that, so it doesn't turn into a battle against women's rights or anything like that. So it's bigger than that. And also to combat it as peacefully. So,
Yeah. She's
Can you put me in there?
She's in there.
And can you put me in there as well?
Oh.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm in here.
Yeah, have you been?
Yeah, I've been to,
Yeah.
I hate seeing those things.
Yeah, they're kind of harsh, yeah.
So I'm passionate about that. But I still love passionate, but I think because I will give you an example. I don't know if you know how much. I think that's my sisters. Yeah, I know.
Hang on, I gotta join audio.
The sisters of family.
my girlfriend is actually an immigration attorney. Yeah, so we have a passion like that, you know. And I like.
Can you seriously not hear me right now?
These policies that take children, you know, away from their yeah, you know, hearing about it, and there's a documentary on Netflix, you know, about it, brutal, you know. I'm not familiar with Africa and all that, but I have a police friend of mine who, his name is Gonzalez. He's from the Midwest. That's he's South Africa, and it's a little north of that.
Yeah, I know maybe away because I can't imagine like this.
Yeah, that's the only thing I know about it. But he was also one that would also talk about some of the issues that he and I can't imagine. I mean, I know that this last year that the refugees come to children who are so it's painful, you know, it's intense. But what else do you do to, if anything?
What I do, like I go to Washington,
Oh, nice.
I have been mostly
So what do we think about time?
5 of them. Then I started, and
well,
of course I can't go alone. But yeah, that's something. And when
I don't know if people are really expecting
Okay.
Are they about ready to wrap up? Are
something
they
been going on in my life.
Yeah.
So I had
like almost ready?
Oh, okay, so a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's like from my class to
I definitely think there should be some kind of
and
criteria,
never
just
mind
to
that
it.
traveling all that while going to talk
Once
to
you
my
pull it back.
help me, like what?
Is it possible to
To
give people a 5-minute warning?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there is some way to send a message to like every single person in the breakout rooms. I've seen it before.
It could just be that I put it in chat to everyone.
Yeah, I think if you put it in chat, it should be sent to everyone.
So what's next?
Yeah,
Can you
some really cool advanced skills is you can actually put a timer that shows up on every breakout room. I do not know how to do that.
No, I think when you close it, it automatically gives a 60-second warning.
Yeah, but what I mean is like, you say, okay, this breakout room is for 4 minutes to talk to this person, 2 minutes for each. You can put a 4-minute timer that shows up.
Oh, very nice.
During the seed training, the family.
Where do you do
That's that's how they have it set up.
Oh, that's all. And then they assign you and they send you someone?
Yeah, I have to chat up to
I just sent it in the chat to everyone.
people.
So that's 5 minutes, so folks know, if you haven't swapped yet.
So, yeah, and that's all I'm not saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're still there. Step by step. Yeah. So
Sure. Do you like working with
It's been 6 to 9 on Saturdays and I just changed it. So this is my first week of doing a lot
I
of
can
Tuesday,
walk with
like
kids.
not even 8-hour shift.
I can walk
And
with
then
kids.
6 to 6 on
I can
Saturday.
walk.
So I think I'll be good. That's a little bit much still. But
I'm
it's better than
not
6 to 9.
sure
Yeah,
what
yeah.
is important, but I'm 100% sure they might send me a to help with the.
Yeah, I think I,
And if they
you know,
also
some of the things
probably
that you're
walk
saying,
in
I feel like, oh, yeah,
for
definitely,
then in.
you know, you share that same thing too, just in that,
Either of those.
you know, when I was
Wow.
really young,
That is,
so I had 3 sisters, so before I was married,
that's a lot.
and when I was growing up, my grandmother, my dad's side,
And do you find
was,
like you're just
kind of like a
find it rewarding?
go-getter in a way, like she went
You
to
know,
college.
the steps that you're taking now to make sure that people at home could possibly
The song of my people.
Yeah.
My grandmother got a lot of it.
Because.
The people being the technologically capable, of course.
So, yeah, well, I mean, we're now in the room with.
Yeah, but she gave you the message.
Yeah,
And then you came through.
No, I come to Kabul in 2007.
Where were you before?
So after finishing my active management, I joined Entrepreneurship to see
Sure, sure, sure.
So, yeah, the process of facilitating involved in a lot.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't join the ministry, I couldn't discover.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Then if I didn't join the amnesty, I couldn't get community. So, yeah, as the process goes on, I gain a lot of wisdom.
Yeah,
knowledge,
okay.
and
Well, that's funny. So my chat.
You went to different schools.
Oh my goodness, how your parents must be so proud.
Consistent.
Broadcast
You know,
message.
I was just thinking about
Yeah,
that.
they
It's
are,
amazing
but,
how,
Oh,
you
there we
know,
go.
Don't you love it when it's a couple
passionate
solution?
about women's rights and
I
things like that.
have
It's like, wow, we've had an experience.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that, you know,
Oh my goodness.
it,
And a lot of like brothers or cousins, things like that.
And then I think we even click the close meeting.
just when I finally realized the injustice in how whack.
Oh my
You
God.
know, and I don't hold a grudge because I think.
Right. And then when we're back in the main
but
room,
I think I didn't
oh good, you got the chat up. Yeah, I just thought it's
Okay.
My dad is one of 16.
Do you want me to pin?
And then my
Like,
mom is
like,
one of 5.
If you would still pin you.
Two and 13, oh my goodness.
Okay,
So,
well, then you choose this then.
When you
They
saw
are
the
for
mistake, that was
appropriate
according
and
to
I'm
when
glad I
the
realized
recording
that
was it was actually
not
The one
or
person
you
has
really
been.
want to focus
obsessive,
on
you know,
one.
Exactly.
And I think that is just so 2020,
Like,
like so,
Sure.
you know, I was very amused, but I didn't want to say anything at the
Yes,
time.
yes.
Yeah, I
It's
see
how
it
you
very
all
often.
those things. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sad that we haven't been able to have this experience because I actually think, and you're right, I think people can become energized out of this. That this is, it's very powerful. Right? When people get over that
So
awkwardness
going
and say,
back.
here's something I care about.
Yeah.
This is why.
no, it's exactly right, yes.
Okay. And we're not.
Great.
Yes.
My goodness,
Yeah.
that's so
It's
awesome.
just strange.
Yeah, no, I find.
Welcome back, everyone. I think we're gonna wrap up. If you need a little more time, if we're good. Hopefully to be continued. So I know we're running a little bit over time, but we wanted to give everybody a chance to just say, how was that? How did it go? Did you get over some awkwardness maybe at first? Was it a little strange to share? Initial thoughts, probably with a stranger too. I mean, maybe some people already know each other, but there's a good chance that especially online, we had people chatting with people that didn't know each other.
I think it's
Anybody-
hard sometimes. Sorry, I should have raised
No,
my
good.
hand.
No,
No,
Shana,
I
good.
think it's hard. I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Schwarzy. Actually, it's funny because I had email exchanges with her, but it's the first time I'm meeting Dr. Schwarzy face to face. But you feel like, you're stepping out and you're in a position of vulnerability, especially when you're
Yeah.
talking to someone that you don't know. And you get, not that I didn't think this of you, Dr. Schwarzy, at all, but you don't, going into it, I wasn't sure who I was going to get paired with. And then you think, oh my God, is someone going to judge me? Because I'm being like vulnerable right now and I'm sharing what I'm passionate about. And so I think that's kind of hard.
Good. Yeah, not good that it was hard, but absolutely, yes, especially with strangers. I mean, this is often something that we recommend that people start with people that they know. Because a lot of times you haven't had this conversation even with the people that are close to you, right? There might be people that you work with, that you're familiar with, that you're roommates with, that you see every day, but you might not have shared the kinds of things about what you care about and where you're coming from. Why there are things that you would be willing to spend your time and your treasure on that they might not know about. And we definitely threw you into the deep end on this one, right? Just go ahead and try it. But Shana, thank you for naming that. Yeah, for saying this, it is a point of vulnerability. Anybody else? Anybody resonate with that vulnerability? Or want to add any other?
Someone's raising their hand.
I think I saw Michelle raise her hand.
I shall go ahead.
Hi. So it was kind of, I think, really empowering to just talk to people that you don't know and find common ground, just like what Nia said earlier. And I think that's one of the things that being like if we are trying to change things forward, it's like the starting conversations are really the root of how much energy we get from other people and how much it helps us keep going. So I think that was a great exercise. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Aishel. Yeah, and there's a level to this that Nia hinted at that's strategic, right? That you're doing this to reach out to somebody, usually somebody that you've thought about as a potential ally, and saying, I want to bare my soul a little bit to this person to try to draw them in to help me in this cause. But I don't think you can get around the human element here it's both risky, but it can be so empowering, like Aishel said. It can be so fruitful that you get to open up. It's almost an excuse to step forward into this. I know G, our new director of campus ministry, is here in the room, and that's something that we see a lot of times in retreats, right? That people are looking for that excuse to be vulnerable, to be seen and heard by others. And part of what we're trying to talk about in terms of activism and organizing is that those elements are there too. You have to be fully yourself. This isn't fake. It is maybe strategic, it's purposeful, but it's trying to bring your full authentic self to this and share that with others, because that's where the people power begins. That's where you acknowledge, we are in this together. I see you, you see me, and we can walk together in this. Any other thoughts? This is kind of a strange place to end the session, because I think this can be very energizing. This can be a moment where you get excited. And then we're about to say, and thanks everybody for coming. Let's see you in 2 weeks. But any final thoughts on this? Yeah, Julie, please.
I just wanted to thank Nia for the one thing that she said. She said no such thing as bad activism, because during COVID in its glory in the spring, I struggled with choosing safety because I could over going out and protesting, because I thought about my son and his safety, as in like virus wise. And it was a constant guilt and I was pained about it, because I felt like, well, that's my privilege. I can choose to do that, and what's going to happen. I wasn't like I was being arrogant about it. I was really and truly upset. Like I felt like I kind of had no choice, almost like I felt like I was trapped, like I have to be home. And yet all these other people are choosing to be out protesting, which makes perfect sense to me. But yet I felt like I couldn't, and I struggled with that. I don't know if I suspect I would have made a different choice if my community was constantly the one where I felt like I had no choice, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I still appreciated her explaining that there's all kinds of activisms, because I'm that person that has no problem having a conversation with somebody anytime, anywhere, whatever it is, even if it's uncomfortable, I'll do it. So I feel like I don't shy away, but I felt hugely guilty not protesting when it was happening.
Great. Julie, thank you. Yeah, I think that goes back to our idea of what's impactful, right? What makes a difference? And I hope one of the things we can take out of this session is that the conversations you just had were impactful. The conversations you take the time for are impactful, both for yourself and being able to articulate what you care about and what you're carrying forward, and to the people that you're sharing yourself with. And I would encourage you to have more of these kinds of conversations, whether it's in the context of a particular cause or just in general. Like Julie saying, when we're stuck and we can't do the things that we want to do, when we want to see change and we feel powerless, these conversations let us know that we're not alone, that we get to express our concern, and we get to put ourselves out there and hope that others will reciprocate some of that concern. And I think we need more of these kinds of conversations as our country gets more and more divided. Times where it's not a shouting match across a dinner table, it's a quiet conversation between two people where you're looking for a closeness, you're looking for an understanding. And that's kind of where we're going to end. This is the first of 3 sessions. Our next session looks at where do you go from there. Once you've started to understand your own story and you are gaining your own voice and you can share your story with others, how do you start to look for others that can work together? How do you find a team of people that you can work together with to make some kind of change? And then also, how do you strategically look at your situation and power map, what professional organizers would call power mapping, the resources that you have available to your team to make that change. So I hope you're able to join us for that. That's November 10th. In the meantime, I do have it's a huge link to a little form. It's basically 4 questions. If anybody has time to fill that up to give us feedback on what we did today, we're always looking to do this better. This is the first time we've done it in this format, and we'd like to learn from this and go forward from it. Everybody, I know everybody's busy. I know some people had to leave early. I want to thank everybody who was able to stay through this time. Thanks also to Ryan for helping lead the first part of this. And I don't know if Nia's even still on the call.
Yes, she is.
Excellent. So huge thanks to Nia. Nia, can you come back in? And
Thanks, Nia.
yeah, I hope I did credit to your section of this in our debrief. All right. Nia, any final words?
Thanks.
Oh, sorry. I just really want to say, I really, again, want to say thank you so much for coming listen to me on a soapbox. It means so much that people still support me after 2 whole years. But yeah, no, I'm open to all questions.
All right. Yeah. If anybody wants to get in touch with anybody, please let me know. You can email me at rew68@cabrini.edu. And thanks again to everybody who was able to attend. Hope to see you on November 10th.